Hi guys, it's Kelly here and I am back with another video. Today's video is featuring the You Anchor Me set from Gina K Designs. It's a beautiful set. It has a lot of encouraging sentiments in it, which I totally love. But it does have it's got a mix of outline and solid images. As soon as I saw the images, I knew that I was going to watercolor it. There are sometimes just like looking at a stamp set, like this is what you're doing. So in order to still use the images and get that no line look, I'm using Whisper Amalgam ink from Gina K. It's a great no line coloring ink. However, because I was doing a more complex stamping, the way that I wanted the card to look, I did struggle a little bit. But it had nothing to do with the ink or the images. It had to do with them, the combination of them, and just what I saw in my head. So I did stamp the largest flower and then I masked it, and then I'm going to stamp the other flowers as well. I intermixed the outline and the solid images because I knew I was going to be painting over them, so it really didn't matter. So if you guys can just bear with me as we head through this. My sinuses are acting up today. I did take a Sudafed, but I only took it about 5 minutes ago, so it has not had time to kick in yet if it's going to work. So yeah, just might be a little sniffly through this one. I apologize. So I'm just going to go through, and I wanted some of my images to be in front of my anchor and some of them to be behind, so it looked like the flowers were wrapping around it. There isn't really any way to, I guess, why didn't I mask the anchor? Well, because it doesn't matter. Do you know what I mean? The only reason I masked the flower is because this ink does pick up the color that you put on top of it, and I didn't want stems on top of my flower. That's the only reason why I masked that one. All the rest of them, because they aren't overlapping each other, I really didn't have to worry about it. So here we're going to get into the watercoloring, and it's been a while. It's been a long while since I've no line watercolored. And so I thought that I would be fast enough to move the pigment. I like to lay down a line of pigment and then go back in with clean water and pull the color out. This was totally pretentious on my part because I did not move fast enough. And then right out the gate, I colored over the anchor. By the way, this one's supposed to be behind, and I colored right over it. So that was me trying to pick up some of the ink. So you can see it is moving here a little bit, but not as much as I would like. So I am going to end up, which I would anyway, but adding in color maybe a little bit sooner than I normally would because I could not really get the line to blend out. That was my own fault for not going like one petal at a time until I was comfortable. Don't make the same mistake that I did unless you're super comfortable and you've been doing lots of no line coloring in this style. Don't just work one petal at a time. Yes, it takes a long time, which is why even though we're going to speed this up, we're going to speed up the painting like we usually do. Even though it's sped up to 4 times as fast as I really painted it, this video is still 20 minutes long because it just takes a long time when you're watercoloring different images. You can't work next to 2 areas that are wet without them bleeding into each other, which is another piece of advice. Make sure you're controlling the amount of water that you're using. I'm using very minimal water, and you can see that when I when it runs off my brush or in picking up clean water, I'm blotting off the base of the bristles on a just clean paper towel. So the less water you're working with, the easier it is to work in the same area because it's going to dry much faster. Here, no line watercoloring is tricky because it gets blobby in the beginning, and you got to work past the point of it being blobby. If you give up now, it's not ever going to look the way that you want it to look. So you just got to keep at it. Keep adding those details and those layers and the colors to add to get that dimension. Even I struggle with it because, like I said, I hadn't done it in a long time. This particular flower was quite the struggle for me. Oh, colors, by the way. I'm using Daniel Smith watercolors. This is the Quinacridone Violet. mixed with a little bit of, I can't remember if it's cerulean or Indian yellow. It's one or the other, to get like a more corally pink color, because I thought that that would be super pretty. And then here I'm going to move on to the next flower, and you can see that I'm going petal by petal. I learned my lesson with the first one, and now I'm going to just do them one at a time. This is a different technique. This is called a wet on wet technique. So I'm filling in the area, which is just the one petal, with clean water, and then I'm dropping pigment in. This is how I'm more comfortable watercoloring, just because that's kind of what I learned first. But I'm going to mix the two, but like as we go along, sometimes I'm going to do it with the line and then pull it out like I am here, and then sometimes I'm going to do the clean water and then drop the pigment in. Either way you do it, again, controlling the amount of water that you're using by putting the base of your paintbrush onto a dry paper towel to suck up the extra moisture. It's such a good thing to get in the habit of until you learn how much water to pick up. And there are some times where I don't have to blot it off because I've kind of learned just through practice how to gauge how much water I want to pick up. But that isn't, like, there are still some times where I will, get crazy, pick up way too much water, and then I still have to blot them off. This flower is a gigantic blob. But it won't stay that way. I'm getting a little bit more comfortable at this point in painting, and I'm going to go back and start adding some depth and dimension to the other flower now that it's dry. I didn't like the one edge, so I'm just going to go back in there and put in some clean water to kind of blend that out, or you could put clean water on it and then blot it up if you really didn't like it at all. But you'll see it's going to pick up here shortly. Because otherwise we would be here forever ever. And while I was there a little bit forever ever painting this thing, it was a good, it was a creative process, which for me is always a little bit of a stress reliever. I think that's why most of us are into this hobby, is to make something, that sense of accomplishment. I love that, making something from nothing, which is probably why I love scene cards so much. But I think that no-line watercoloring is really, really beautiful. I would like to get better at it. And there are some images like the ones from this one from You Anchor Me, where it's just, my brain does not have a choice. It's the only way that it sees it. And until that card gets made, I can't look at it any other way. So yeah, I think that's that. Well, obviously we'll touch, back and forth in between story time about the painting. Just like we always do. People always laugh and they're like, "Oh, you always say now back to the card. Stand by. We have to go back to the card." Because I'm too busy talking about other things. Yeah. Anyway, so I thought this was super cute. There was a lady who commented on one of my videos earlier this week, and she, so very somber, not funny at all. She lives in Australia. She's in the middle of these brush fires. Thankfully, she is in a point where the fires are controlled. At this point, she does not have to evacuate. So just, as you're going about your daily life, you could throw up some prayers for her and then the other people who are living there. Obviously, this has been going on for quite some time, and people are dying and animals are dying, and it's scary business. But so she watches my videos, and her husband apparently listens in the background or something of her watching my videos. And so he nicknamed me Anywho, because that's what I say. So apparently I was the Anywho girl. And then as he progressed to listening, or her talking about me, not sure. Oh wait, we have to go back to the card. So here I really struggled with this particular flower because it has a lot of detail in it. It's a beautiful flower, but because I had a lot going on here with leaves and flowers and the anchor, here's what I did. Remember in the beginning when I told you that the Whisper ink will pick up the color that is on top of it? I'm using a very pale wash of the quinacridone, is it pink? Quinacridone pink? No. Violet. No, that's purple. What? I think I said violet earlier. Y'all, that was a lie. What is it? Magenta? It's the pink one, guys. I can't help you. That's what I've got. It's a very professional video. But anyway, I used just a very light wash of that to go over top of it so I could see the lines underneath. You kind of want to work from the center out so that you don't get crazy with all of your color like where it shouldn't be. But as it like starts to absorb the color, you can really see the lines much better. And that worked for me to kind of be able to know where to put the pigment. Also, notice how blobby this thing is before we go in the second time around. Okay? Just keep note of that. Keep note of the blob transformation. Anyway, so apparently, as she watched more videos or had discussion about it or whatever, he has now nicknamed me Kelly Who. And I think that is the cutest thing ever. Because, first of all, I love that it's creating conversation between her and her husband, about the videos and, her hobby and stuff like that. And then that he's like taking the time to relate to her enough that he's got nicknames for like her favorite crafters, which I just think it's totally adorable. So I love it. Kelly Who. It's totally cute. So thank you for that. That totally made me smile. What else was there? Oh, on Instagram. So I like to doodle. I've always been a doodler, even in school. And people would be offended. Teachers, instructors, whatever would be offended. You're not paying attention, blah, 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 blah. But I'm one of those people who can't sit still. And if I'm forced to sit still, that's all I can think about. Being able to doodle or draw while I'm listening to lecture or whatever helps me to concentrate. Not everybody is like that. Not everybody can do two things at once. But I've literally built my entire career on being able to multitask. So I'm confident in my ability. And I was in a dispatch school, I think when I worked for the state, and the instructor said something and I was like, it helps me concentrate. And he was like, the first time I call on you and you don't know the answer, you're done. And I was like, deal, dude. And then we never had a problem because I was listening, I was paying attention. But at work, I have just like a desk calendar. And while I'm on the phone with people, I like to doodle on my desk calendar. And so sometimes I just draw random flowers or designs or whatever comes to me that day. I really like flowers. No big shock there, right? So on the card here, I'm going to go and do the berries. I'm going to let that first layer on the large flower dry before I go back in and add more layers of color to get that dimension and separation. So I doodle on my calendar and I just, do my own little doodles, whatever. So, but I thought it would be fun to kind of challenge myself to learn how to draw whatever the flower of the month was. And so for January, it was carnations, which are my mama's favorite. Those are my mom's favorite flower, and snowdrops, which I had really honestly never even heard of. And then I took some pictures and posted them on Instagram because I like to share with you guys, you know that. And Eric always makes fun of me. He's like, do it for the gram. And I was like, I am not doing something I wouldn't normally be doing. I'm just taking a picture of the thing that I would regularly be doing, which sometimes isn't that interesting, but sometimes it is. So anyway, several people had commented on there, like, you should be drawing stamps and you should have your own stamp line. Which is it's wonderful. Thank you so much for the encouragement. I'm so glad that you enjoy seeing the flowers and the doodles and all of those things. I never really went that way with it. I did buy a Wacom tablet, which is how you would create stamps, but it's been in the box, still shrink wrapped, honestly, for like 2.5 years. I just never got around to it because I have all these other things going on. Maybe someday, not really sure. The whole point I'm telling you this is because this one lady had asked me that she's like, I really like to draw flowers as well. How did you learn? And here is how I learned. When I was younger, I had those like how-to draw books like that you always see at the craft store. Those are legit. They will teach you things. So even if it's just like, even, when you first started card making and you were like copying everybody else's designs because you couldn't come up with any of your own, it's kind of like that. Like you go through and you learn how to draw the things that they teach you to draw, and then you can take that and adapt it to your own style. And then reference photos. Like people, I think they think they're supposed to just draw things that come out of their head. And eventually, I think that most people can do that. If you practice, everything is about practice. Coloring, watercoloring, drawing, gaming, knitting, whatever it is that you're trying to do. Everything is about practice. And that is where most people fall off because they don't want to take the time to practice. And it's funny because I watch my son and he'll play the Switch. And I love Zelda. Zelda is my game. I have loved it my whole life. I've played all of them from the original on, regular Nintendo all the way up. And he gets frustrated because he dies. And I was like, yeah, you got to keep going. Dude, your character died, you start over again. Like, you don't want to be like that old curmudgeonly, like back in my day, but seriously, back in my day, like if you died on the regular Nintendo, there was no saved game. There was no go back to your progress. There was no, dude, you started over again. Super Mario, if you died, you was back level 1-1. So I don't feel bad for you. Pretty much is what it comes down to. I'm very unempathetic about that because I had to suffer through it. And it builds character and tenacity and stick-to-itiveness. So you do that. You stick with that. But most people in life don't want to do it either, quite honestly. They don't want to take the time to practice. And that is really the only thing that is going to improve any skill that you're trying to learn. So just if you're somebody who is interested in drawing or Copic coloring or colored pencil coloring or whatever that would pertain to, our craft, or just really anything you want to learn in life, honestly, keep practicing it and try to find other people who know what they're doing, who can help you, or another reference that can help you, like like these books or whatever. This lady, I'm sure, she was reaching out about how to get better. So there she is. She's doing her thing. She saw somebody that she liked how they drew, and then she asked questions. Awesome. And I'm sure that her flowers will be beautiful. I'm sure they were already beautiful, honestly. But I think that sometimes we compare ourselves to other people, and that is, comparison is the thief of joy. We've talked about this. But yeah, so I have been doing that, and so we did carnations and snowdrops, and then I did these other ones that were just like flowers that I drew, and then I tried to find a flower that matched them, and I think it was like an Astoria or something like that. I don't know. I Googled 5-petal flower, and those are what came up that looked the most similar to what I had drew. So that's what I'm calling them. But so for February, I think there's 2 for February as well. I have not, I think I did look them up early on, like when I was looking for January's, but I don't remember what they are. I feel like one of them's like an iris, which is, or maybe I just remember it because that's the one that scares me the most. Like any of the ones that are like the stalk ones, I'm very frightened of those because they're just all right on top of each other, where the others, like the carnation is very clearly on a stem. They have those very thick stems. Or like I like drawing daffodils because they're all separate. They're, separate from each other. So that makes it a little more easy. So I'm very nervous about those, but I do think it's a good challenge. So I would like to know, do you have something like that that you try to challenge yourself to do? Know what I'm saying? So we're doing the watercoloring of the anchor. I chose like a navy color because I thought that, because blue's my boyfriend, straight up. But then I thought that it would be more interesting or a more dynamic design than just doing the anchor like a gray or a black. So that's why I chose the navy. And then I am doing it, I guess, as if the light source is in the top right. So my highlights will be on the right hand side, shadows underneath bottom left, and that's how I did it. It did take me a few tries to get enough pigment on there that I was happy with the amount of shading that was going on, But that's just, you know, the same thing with the working with the layers, making sure that you're getting good dimension. It certainly does not have to be as involved as this particular card is. But you know, you could do one image, like maybe just do the anchor image to practice your no line watercoloring, or one flower image to practice your no line watercoloring. So once this part is done, I am going to still go in further, just because I like detail work, and add more details on the dry areas. So I picked up, I think it's permanent brown, and added some dots in the center of my flower. I'm also going to use some darker green to add in the lines back into the leaves, you know, for those to get that kind of detail. And I just think that this makes such a difference in the end result of the painting, to get away from that quote unquote blobby look. Now, some people like looser styles of watercolor, which is totally fine. Like, they are beautiful. I just can't do that. That's just not me. I'm going to add a little bit more color to the bottom left-hand side of the berries. They looked very one note to me. So I wanted to add a little bit of shadow in there. And then for the sentiment, there's a bunch of them in here that are so cute. You know, it says, you anchor my, they have a soul, like a script soul. You anchor my soul, let hope anchor your soul. The one I chose was I'll be your anchor. And so I have 3 very close crafty girlfriends, and like 2 years ago for Christmas, I bought them little anchors, for Christmas, little anchor necklaces, for like keeping me grounded while I was going through my things, and just, you know, loving me. I did add some shimmer to the anchor. Be careful with this. You can reactivate the watercolor if it hasn't had time to cure. And then that's it. That's the whole card. So thank you guys so much for joining me, and I will catch you on the next video. Bye.